we've been talking to the Trump campaign for a while, and you know, he is neither confirmed nor has he rejected our invitation. I think that our pitch is strong. I think that he will be there, but who knows? We were talking to someone very senior in the Biden campaign uh, for weeks, trying to just get an answer. It's very hard to get Biden to appear publicly anywhere. And so, I'm not holding my breath that he's going to come in for this event.
Most people, particularly women, have probably heard of Bitcoin, but they don't really maybe know what it is. It's not explained very well in the media. So, could you give just a brief explanation of what Bitcoin is, like third grade level?
Yeah, it's a tough one. You're leading off with the most difficult one. Uh, Bitcoin is a decentralized, global, permissionless digital currency. So let's break down a couple of those words, right? So it's decentralized. That means that there is no single person or user or leader that gets to define what Bitcoin is and what Bitcoin isn't. So that means that the entire user base of Bitcoin, all the people who are just buying and hodling it, all the people who are mining it, the people who run nodes to support the infrastructure of Bitcoin, they all have to agree on what Bitcoin is and what transactions were valid in Bitcoin in order for the system to work. And so, it's very cool in that way. A lot of people are like, well, who runs Bitcoin? Like, who leads Bitcoin? There is no leader. It'd be the same thing as asking who runs gold. Who leads gold, right? So, that's the decentralized part, permissionless. So this is the really cool part. No one can prevent anyone from using Bitcoin. So, a lot of times you hear about people having their PayPal account shut down, their banking license, their banks shut down their accounts, in areas where there's not a lot of banking infrastructure. All you need in order to use Bitcoin is an internet connection, and you can use Bitcoin. So it's permissionless in that way. And then the third part, I guess, would be just this global money. I mean, it's a digital form of currency. There is no physical Bitcoin. It only exists online, and it's being adopted readily around the world, both as right now a form of savings protection. A form of people who aren't sure about their own local currency. That you see this a lot in developing countries, third world countries. They use Bitcoin for a different way. In the U.S. or in first world countries, a lot of times it's mostly speculative. As people thinking that the number is going to go up, the price is going to go up. But it is being readily adopted around the world and more being used as a currency in local markets. So that's my answer. How did I do?
What particularly intrigued you about Bitcoin? Like, what made you see it for the first time and go, ooh, I like this?
It's a good question. I would say I got in like 2017. And at that time, I was very interested in building decentralized systems. So that was around the time that blockchain, especially, was being talked about as a solution to a lot of problems. And that's what initially intrigued me. Now, what's interesting is, I've worked in the industry now for over 7 years, and as I've continued to kind of see ideas thought of and tested, especially in the blockchain world, the Web3 world, more and more I've begun to realize that those ideas don't work. And truly, there's just one major innovation in this space, and it's Bitcoin. So all the rest of crypto, there are some very cool ideas that are being pursued out there. Decentralized computing networks, decentralized financial tools, stable coins, like all of these things, they don't exactly operate as they're built. They don't exactly, they have these trade-offs that are not often talked about. And really, it's Bitcoin that is truly decentralized. It truly works exactly how people talk about it. And I think it's 99% of the innovation that you've seen from the space is truly just that Bitcoin, eureka moment. So that's how I would say I've gotten into it, and then what I've kind of learned as I've gone through, or maybe I got into it really for the wrong reasons. I didn't understand truly the innovation of Bitcoin, as related to everything else.
I'm going to kind of play devil's advocate here. So Bitcoin has a
Sure.
lot of critics: Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Peter Schiff, Paul Krugman. One in particular, Michael Burry, who got rich off the subprime crash and predicting that. He has warned that Bitcoin's been on the precipice of collapse for some time. You've got Nassim Taleb, who's an NYU professor, and he has called Bitcoin functionally a Ponzi scheme. So how would you counter those and convince people that Bitcoin is here to stay and it's not some scam for a bunch of bros, essentially?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So, first of all, each of those people you named has kind of a different, I would say, reason that they don't like Bitcoin. Okay, so we can dive into a few of them because the reasons are sometimes a little silly. So Peter Schiff, you mentioned, right? He runs a gold company. Bitcoin is like maybe the biggest competitor to gold in the world now. We just took gold and we digitized it, right? So he's got a lot of reasons not to like Bitcoin for that reason. But he's also been talking about how Bitcoin's about to collapse since 2013 when it was like $10 per Bitcoin. So there's also this salt meter that we're sitting at around $60,000 a Bitcoin now. He missed out on a lot, and gold hasn't really moved in that same amount of time. Michael Burry is interesting. He's one that I would expect to come around on Bitcoin maybe this cycle. When I've seen him kind of talk negatively about it, it was only in the 2022 FTX kind of crash where he was right. Bitcoin did go down from where he was talking about it, but it didn't die. It didn't go away, and that's the beauty of Bitcoin. It never will go away. It is, to use a Nassim Taleb term, it is anti-fragile. So the more things that happen to it, the more ways that it may fail that get tested and it doesn't fail, the stronger that Bitcoin becomes. Because now it's like, okay, we thought that maybe a nation state banning Bitcoin would cause Bitcoin to fail. Well, nation states did ban Bitcoin. Bitcoin's just sitting around all-time highs, and so like as you kind of go through, as it continues to exist, Bitcoin, further validates its kind of use case and narrative. And so, who are some of the other ones? Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett only invests in stocks, and he's looking for distribution. He's looking for something that generates cash flows, and so that's how he views things. But Warren Buffett is also the biggest advocate of don't invest into things that you don't understand thoroughly. That's why he invests into Hershey's and Coke and all these simple things that he understands super well, and it's worked brilliantly for him. He just doesn't understand Bitcoin. He hasn't taken the time to understand Bitcoin, and Bitcoin doesn't really fall into his investment thesis. So of course he wouldn't believe in it. Who's another one? Taleb. Taleb actually loved Bitcoin, before COVID. And this is actually a fascinating kind of story. But Taleb was a massive Bitcoiner. He owned a lot of Bitcoin. He believed in it strongly. And then COVID came around, and there was this guy who was very loud in the Bitcoin space called Saifedean Ammous. And he wrote a book called The Bitcoin Standard, which is a really good book about Bitcoin. And Saifedean and Nassim went at each other online around COVID and around masking. And they were diametrically opposed. Nassim was very pro-masking, and Saifedean was very anti-masking. And because of that clash, Nassim turned around and cast the entire Bitcoin community as these, crazy anti-mask, COVID denier kind of guys, and therefore Bitcoin is dead, Bitcoin isn't real, and I'm going to go prove it. And then he wrote a really dumb paper about like how the actual value of Bitcoin is zero or something like that. It got, laughed out of the room when he wrote it. And he's kind of just been sour ever since. But he's one who probably is eventually going to come back to, I would bet.
Okay, I didn't know there were so many catfights in Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's we're on the ladies love politics, right? I mean, there is nothing more political than money. Even the most apolitical form of money there is, it still is just shrouded in politics. You can't get away from it.
If someone is new to it and they're listening, what would they get out of going to this convention coming up? Is it just going to be mainly for people who know a lot and went down that rabbit hole? or is there something that a newbie could gain?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that the newbies have the most to gain from the conference for a couple of reasons. Number one, we have assembled some of the most foremost experts in Bitcoin in the world. So all the people who are developing on Bitcoin, who are building companies around Bitcoin, who are mining Bitcoin, they're all going to be there, and they're all super friendly, approachable people. And so, if you have questions about Bitcoin, how does this work? What does this mean? What's a blockchain? How do you mine? I mean, you can talk to the people who are leading the world in answering that question and get, one-on-one FaceTime. So that's really cool. Secondly, if you're interested in the space, if you're, a little bit about it, you want to learn more, and maybe you want to like spend some time in this space, all of the companies that are hiring are going to be there. So, this is a really great moment to break into the industry. If you're looking to work in it, you're looking to learn more, you're looking to get involved. There is no better way to get involved than to go to, Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville, but any Bitcoin conference, and just go meet those people that are building the future, and build your network. And then the last thing I'll say is you can get a great community there. So, one of the challenges that has existed for Bitcoiners since the beginning is because it's online and because it's decentralized, you may not know many people in person who understand Bitcoin that deeply. You may have to go to Twitter or go to Reddit or go to a chat, on Telegram or something in order to actually ask questions, learn about it, talk about what's going on, dissect the news around Bitcoin, all of that. You may not have that in-person group. And so this is a really great place where you can go meet people in person, and find people maybe from your area, from your city, from your town, from your neighborhood, who are also there, and grow your kind of local group, local network. So for those reasons, and many more, it's great for newbies, because of course, many more being, we also have tons of just 101 content to go dissect and learn more about Bitcoin from people on stage. So, I guess for all of those reasons, it's a great place for a newbie to come learn about Bitcoin.
What would you say to a woman that's maybe listening to this and says, okay, maybe I'll invest a little bit in Bitcoin, see what it's about, but I don't want to go to the convention. It's probably just, a frat party, bunch of dudes hanging around, talking about nerdy stuff. I mean, what particularly do you think women don't know that Bitcoin is great for that they would use in their everyday life or could gain out of going to the convention?
Yeah, so two thoughts on that. Very quickly, we do have a women's brunch that is almost sold out. It'll probably sell out this week. We only opened tickets last week, so there are a lot of women who are very excited to be there. And we have like a full brunch for all sorts of women who are working in Bitcoin, who just invest in Bitcoin, who are curious about Bitcoin and don't know much about it. So highly recommend going to the Women in Bitcoin brunch if you're coming to the event. To the second part of your question, and maybe the bigger part of the question, one of the things that I think Bitcoin is limited by right now is that we want to see Bitcoin as the global currency. We want everyone in every day in their lives using Bitcoin. We call it hyper Bitcoinization, right? And it's this belief, someday we won't be using dollars, we won't be using francs or euros. We'll just be using Bitcoin, and it'll be this global monetary system that unites the entire world under a common value, a common language of value, right? So that's, I'd say, the romantic view of it. Well, the reality is that if it's just men that are doing Bitcoin, then that's 50 plus percent, 51% if you kind of do the math on how many women there are that aren't using Bitcoin. So we have massively failed if women aren't using Bitcoin as much as men. And so I think it's super important to make sure that women are adopting Bitcoin, are learning about Bitcoin, because for all the reasons that it empowers men in developing countries, even more so, it can empower women. There's a really great example, actually. The Ugandan women's movement was protesting for women's rights in Uganda because they were treated as second-class citizens and all these things, and they had all of their bank accounts shut off in the country by the leadership, and so they turned to Bitcoin, and they raised money from strangers around the world. All they had to have was a QR code, and anyone who saw that QR code could send Bitcoin to them and support them. And so they basically, freed themselves from this kind of, you know, treachery from the government that was trying to prevent them from protesting for their rights. And Bitcoin was a huge tool for them. So, it truly is a way to empower people anywhere, regardless of gender, regardless of sex, regardless of orientation, regardless of race. It is a tool to empower yourself to make decisions in your own life and do what you want to do, have that individual freedom. So that would be my long-winded answer to your question.
So when it comes to speakers, I know that RFK Jr. is coming. Were Trump and Biden invited, or the Libertarian candidate Chase Oliver, or did they just refuse because they don't care about Bitcoin? I'm always kind of curious.
It's a great question. There's a lot to unpack there too. So we've been talking to all three major political candidates for the past 5 months in varying capacities. Right? You can probably guess which ones have been very receptive and which ones have been less receptive. Now, I think that we're learning. And I'm learning this in real time. So I'm the one having a lot of these conversations with the candidates right now. And we were talking to someone very senior in the Biden campaign for weeks, trying to just get an answer. Does he want to speak? Would he like to talk to the Bitcoiners? What would he want to say? And we got kind of this hey, we'll send this up the ladder, we'll circle back. And come to find out, really, from the past couple of weeks, I think what we've actually been seeing is just that it's very hard to get Biden to appear publicly anywhere. And so, I'm not holding my breath that he's going to come in for this event. But that being said, if he would like to, we'd love to have him. This is one of my most passionate things. It goes back to exactly what we were talking about with women. It's also for political affiliation. Bitcoin does not discriminate based on whether you're a diehard liberal, a red-blooded conservative, a communist, a socialist. Anyone can use Bitcoin, right? And anyone has reason to use Bitcoin. And so, I lament, I hate seeing Bitcoin pigeonholed just into kind of one political ideology because it's for everybody. And so, yeah, we want Democrats, we want Republicans, we want libertarians. Libertarians have always loved Bitcoin, so that's an easy one. But we want to see them all at the event, and we want to see them valuing the Bitcoiner audience, because here's the pitch that we gave. We gave this to RFK, we gave this to Trump, we gave this to Biden. Right now, Bitcoin is around $1 trillion asset class. In the US, you have roughly 50 million, probably closer to 75 million now, Americans that hold Bitcoin. Okay? As Bitcoin increases in price, the percentage of the net worth of those 75 million Americans increases. And so Bitcoin is going to continue to be a growing influence in the way that people think about their political decisions. And people are not going to want to vote for candidates who are anti-Bitcoin. That is voting against their own pocketbook. And people do not vote against their own pocketbook. And so, this is a huge opportunity for, number one, for candidates to really align with the Bitcoiner ethos. And number two, to prevent the division from a political sense. Prevent the Bitcoiner kind of question becoming a way that you lose the election. Get on board, or else the other guy might, and you may lose, right? So this is a massive moment, and 2024 specifically is going to be a massive election for Bitcoin, I believe. And so we're very passionately trying to urge these candidates to come in and really think deeply about the ideas and ideals of Bitcoin. And make sure that they're not doing things that would run counter to it. Because if they are, they may find themselves in the wrong end of the ballot come November. the Trump campaign was much more receptive. So, I don't have news to share around that, except to say that we've been talking to them. I mean, this has been reported by Axios and a few other mainstream sources. We've been talking to the Trump campaign for a while. And, you know, he is neither confirmed nor has he rejected our invitation. And so, we could find out today that he will be speaking. We could find out today that he's going to pass. Who knows? It's Trump. It's a total wild card. So, yeah, exactly. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I personally, I think that our pitch is strong. I think that he will be there, but who knows? You know, we actually just haven't had a good conversation with him. I would be very open to having him. Most of our audience are libertarians, or at least the original audience of Bitcoiners are hardcore libertarians. So, we'd be very open to having him. I don't know much about him though, so I would need to learn more and understand what he thinks about Bitcoin. I haven't even heard what his stance on Bitcoin is.
If someone could only attend one conference day, is there one that you think they should attend over the other?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the KG answer is it depends on whether the Orange Man comes in. If he does come in, then what we're going to end up doing is, assuming that we have RFK and Trump, then RFK is going to speak on one day and Trump's going to speak on the other day. And so we'd still have to lock in what those days are, because we know what we have them penciled in as. But until it's all locked in, who knows? It could go totally up in the air. But I would say in general, we're a 3-day event. The first day is called Industry Day. It's much smaller. It's for people who are there to do business. And so, if you're just a curious person trying to learn more about Bitcoin or trying to, get your feet wet, let's say, I would say that's a less important day for you. That would be the 25th. And that you should focus on the 26th and the 27th. Those are going to be much more festival feel. People are going to be showing up in crazy outfits. People are just there to have fun. They're there to learn. They're there to celebrate, another trip around the sun with Bitcoin. So those would be the days that I would recommend. And then, which one from there, we'll get that agenda out pretty soon and you can kind of make a decision based on that.
Why is the convention taking place in Nashville? Is that like some secret hub of Bitcoin, or is it just a convenient location? I'm kind of curious why and how y'all picked that city.
Yeah, great question. So we've been based in Miami for the past 3 years, and we loved Miami. It was a fantastic city for the event, and it was a lot of fun. There were a couple of reasons why we decided to move it. Number one is that, and this is like a little bit pedantic, but we started being called Bitcoin Miami. And it was like, we started kind of being associated as like the Miami Bitcoin conference, and we're the Bitcoin conference, like we're the biggest industry wide conference for Bitcoin in the world. And so, we wanted to make sure that we were kind of establishing our brand, outside of just being tied to one city. Like Bitcoin is bigger than Miami. Bitcoin is bigger than the United States. Bitcoin is bigger than any one place. And so, we don't want it to be tied to like, oh, Miami is just the Bitcoin city. No, like Miami is a Bitcoin city, but Bitcoin exists everywhere. So that's number one. And then why Nashville specifically? So number one, I'm from Nashville, and so I love Nashville. It's my home. I wanted to bring people there. Number two, our company's headquarters are actually in Nashville as well. And so, we've been kind of growing the Nashville Bitcoiner scene for years. And it's not the biggest, community, but it'll surprise people in terms of how many Bitcoiners are around Nashville. And so, that's part of it. The last thing I'll say is Nashville's just fun. Nashville's a really great place. Bitcoiners are usually younger. They're usually, more freedom loving. They don't want to like, go to let's say they don't want to go to a New York or a San Francisco. We have this saying in the company where it's like, Bitcoin is for coastal elites, but it's also for flyover country. It's for country farms and country clubs, and so it's this idea that like sometimes people are too pigeonholed and thinking of like, oh, Bitcoin, New York, LA, Chicago, Miami, those are the Bitcoin hubs. No, the Bitcoin hubs are Tampa and St. Louis and Austin, Texas and Nashville and, Charlotte, like all over. There are these massive Bitcoin communities. And so we wanted to locate ourselves more centrally to everybody. And one thing that I'm excited to see happen is, for Miami, you have to fly there. Unless you're right on the outskirts of Miami, you're going to have to fly in. For Nashville, if you live in Indianapolis, if you live in Ohio, if you live in Kentucky, North Carolina, Alabama, Florida, all around, you have this massive, radius where people can drive in. They can bring their families. They can, enjoy the town for a week. And so I think it opens the door to a lot more people to be able to come enjoy and learn about Bitcoin. So that's the big, I guess, vision for why we wanted to locate it in Nashville this year. And so far, I mean, it's been great to kind of open the door to all these people who didn't want to hop a flight to Miami.
Is there a book or a lecture that you would recommend someone interested in Bitcoin should read or watch that's kind of like a seminal piece? I know you mentioned a book earlier, but would that be like the one you would recommend to everybody?
I think that the Bitcoin Standard is a very good book for people to read. So that's like what I'll say is like that's the easy answer. Tons of people in Bitcoin. That's like the first book that they recommend. A couple other ones that I would say are worth checking out. If you wanted like a YouTube, that would be a good explanation. There's a guy named Andreas Antonopoulos. Okay, so it's a Greek name. It's a little hard to spell, but Andreas Antonopoulos. It's spelled exactly how it sounds. He is like the OG explainer about Bitcoin since like 2012. He's been making videos that truly get at the crux of like why Bitcoin is important. So he's phenomenal. Highly recommend him. And then I would say, just because we're on a political show, it's oftentimes you kind of encounter the more conservative or libertarian viewpoints about Bitcoin. If you want a very good progressive case for Bitcoin, there's a book called The Progressive Case for Bitcoin. That's also a phenomenal explainer that really talks about some of those other reasons, freedom from maybe the capital F standpoint, and there's a collection of stories in there. They talk about the Ugandan women's movement, but there's tons more. I mean, that's just the one example I came up with, but there's so many examples of minority groups, disenfranchised groups, people who haven't had access to financial tools for their entire lives, being able to use Bitcoin. And that is such a strong narrative that's under talked about. And so the Progressive Case for Bitcoin does a great job kind of going into that side of it as well. And it's not just about number go up, it's about freedom go up as well.
Is there anything you want to add that I didn't ask, or want to tell people where and how to get tickets? Anything you want to throw in at the last minute?
Yeah, no, I mean, Courtney, this has been fantastic and great to meet you. Excited to see you in Nashville. And for people who want to come, you can go to b.tc/conference, and we're Bitcoin 2024. We're happening July 25th through 27th in Nashville, and I hope I see you all there. It's going to be a really fun time. Great launching place for people to really get into Bitcoin, learn more about it, explore some of the ideas and ideals of it, maybe get a job if you're looking for it, and yeah, just immerse yourself for a few days in all that is Bitcoin.
Now that you know where we've been, find out where we're going. Tune in to Ladies Love Politics, where you can stay informed without going insane.